जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, 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 गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, जसोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन, जसोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन, जामुन तिरवनचारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी, गोपी जन वल्लभ गोपी जन वल्लभ, जामुन तिरवनचारी, जय जामुन तिरवनचारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय गिरिवरधारी, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे श्याम। नाम श्रेष्ठं मनुमपि शचीपुत्रमत्र स्वरूपम्, रूपं tasyagrajamurupuriyamaturi goshtabhatim Radha Kundam Girivaramao Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Prasita Kripaya Sri Guru Tanatosmi Sri Guru Tanatosmi Nindantam pulakot karena vikasat nipa prasuna chavim Prodhi kritya bhuja dvayam hari hari tyuchar padantam moho Nrityantam drutamasru nirjarachayai hasinchantamurvitalam Gayantam nija parshadaih parivritam Tam goramevastumah Alipik paripalita prabalita sanandamalokita pratyasang sumanah falodaya vidho samudam mamodita Vrindaranya bhuvi prakasha madhura sarvati shayi siya Radha madhavayo pramodayatu mam ullasa kalpadrumaha Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Chai Gosaira Kori Charana Bandhan Jaha Hoite Vignanas Avishta Puran Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe. Welcome to the basement of the Jiva Institute in Vrindavan, where under the auspices of Srila Satyanarayan Das Babaji, we are engaged in a project of the translation and annotation of the 6 Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. And we have arrived now at the 6th and final Sandarbha, Priti Sandarbha. And I am, in order to help me to perfect this work, I know that it's going to take some extra time, but I hope to be able to really add something to the quality of the Sandarbhas. And the only way that that would happen is in particular the Priti Sandarbha. I've already said this before, that this is, these are things that I should have finished in my youth. Somehow or another I wasted my life and I never studied the 6 Sandarbhas. And so here at the end of my life I have the opportunity to understand the Priti Sandarbha under the guidance of Srila Satyanarayan Das Babaji, and I think it's a great opportunity for me to also share a little bit with the rest of the world something about the Priti Sandarbha. I realize that this is very specialized. I'm doing it also in a specialized way. I want to do it my way, so I'm not really doing it with the thought of my audience as much as would probably be best. So I'm not tailoring this for my audience. I want my audience to come to me if they're interested in the kinds of things that are being discussed. So in this Kali Yuga, with people from all over the world being able to cater to their own very specialized tastes, we have this little corner of the universe where we talk about the Bhagavatam and we talk about Priti. So in actual fact, Priti is Babaji says this often, the whole Bhagavatam is there to teach us about Priti. And I think that, in fact, I'm a bit of a believer in evolution. I know that people don't like to hear this in the rather constricted circles of anti-scientism. But let's say that we have, whether we believe in the evolution of human species or not, we can certainly witness the evolution of ideas, and nothing is more salutary than the study of history in order to see how things do change and evolve. And in this particular period, of human history, we have more or less access to all of human experience, past and present. Of course, not yet future, but we're inventing that future all the time. So what we've done here, going to the Bhagavatam, is we kind of selected a sacred history of the universe. I will explain that in a moment, because here, let's just go through this. We're starting with Anucheta 14. And here it says, it's one very short Anucheta. This is about Sarupya Mukti. So he just says, Tadevang Swarupyam api gyeyam yatha. So Gajendro Bhagavat Sparshat Vimukto Jnana Bandhanat Prapto Bhagavato Rupam Pita Vasa Chaturbhuja. So Gajendra, who was an elephant, right? So he, when Bhagavan appeared to him and touched him, that set him free from the crocodile and also set him free from his material bondage. And so at that moment he took a form like that of Bhagavan. He took he took the form of Bhagavan, which was what? Which was Pita Vasas Chaturbhuja. So Pita Vasas Chaturbhuja. So even Gajendra took the form of a four-armed Narayan with a yellow cloth. Similarly, the mukti called Sarupya should also be understood. So the mukti called Sarupya should be understood in a similar fashion. Sukadev refers to it in relation to Gajendra. So here, by contact with Bhagavan, the king of the elephants became free from the bondage of ignorance and attained a form similar to his, endowed with 4 arms and dressed in yellow garments. So that is, the meaning is clear, spashtam. And Babaji just has a short note here. He says, it is interesting to note that Sri Jiva Goswami again gives the example of Gajendra, an elephant, for Sarupya Mukti. This is to show that Sarupya, which is indicative of all other types of mukti, is not limited to human beings. But it also means that whatever kind of distorted form you may have, that doesn't necessarily impede your attainment of a siddha deha, and a siddha deha that is suitable to your particular rasa. I was joking with Babaji the other day briefly, the idea about, I was talking about the idea that was expressed before about the human body, the material body becoming spiritualized, right? So I laughed because we both are bearded old men. I said, I don't think if our bodies are spiritualized, we could go directly like Dhruva into the spiritual world. But where would we go with these bodies? What particular lila would they be opportune for? Is there a big demand? Maybe there's a Golok newspaper with a want ads section, and you could look it up and see whether there are any old people wanted. Of course, we meditate on a Bhava Yogya Deha, Bhava Yogya, the body that is suitable for the Leela. And so any bodies that are, corrupted by identity with this world and with the material story related to this body, and the desires and the sufferings that this body has undergone in this life. To leave that behind for a spiritual body in transcendence. So the point is that your external body does not preclude. So this is a difficult task now, I have to admit, because human beings are very social in nature. And so to turn inward requires a bit of discipline and a bit of it requires a bit of individual effort. So there are some people who are naturally introverted, and there are other people who are naturally extroverted. So for those who are extroverted, the need to do meditation is probably, they might not be able to do it in such great amounts, but they should do some of it in order to help calm the manic nature of extroversion. In general, the entire, and this is something that comes, if you read, what is the form, what is the shape of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in comparison to the world of the Bhagavatam? Here's the question. So the Bhagavatam is a history. It's telling the history of the world, the history of creation, how the world came into being. It's talking about the evolution of the world. And it presents a world of the Satya Yuga and rishis and sages and celibates and people who are endowed with mystic powers and people who live extraordinarily long lives and powerful demons who use the same tricks of tapasya and so on to thwart the plans of the gods. And so the world is populated and filled with gods and demons and rakshasas and so on. So the Bhagavatam is this a picture of the world where that is really based in Varnashram. Right. So now I'm going to come. So this is where we are now. I'm going to come into the story. Why am I talking about these things? Because, well, here we start with Samipya Sayujya Muktis and the gradation of Muktis. All right, so this is now we are in 15. We are Anuched 15, my friends. So in Anuched 15, we are doing this is Samipya Sayujya Mukti and the gradation of Muktis. So we're going to start here with Samipya Mukti. So now this is why I'm telling all these things that I've been saying. I'm talking about the Bhagavata world, and I'm actually starting to separate it from the Chaitanya world. So the Chaitanya world, and the Chaitanya world is quite different from the world we're in right now. So we have these different kind of historical moments that are being provided to us. The story of Indian civilization is being given to us in mythical form. But nevertheless, even the myth of an ancient myth reveals a lot about the ancient world. So the world of the Veda, the world of the Upanishads, the world of the Puranic gods. These are the worlds that are being developed, that are evolving before our eyes in the midst of the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam comes into the world of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and creates an effect, but creates an effect that is mediated through the particular culture in which it arose, which is quite different from the world of the Puranas, the world of the Bhagavatam. Even that Bhagavatam comes from South India, which is a very different culture. And although the South Indian culture had some influence on Bengal through the Carnatic kings, and the Bhagavatam may well have come to the North India through the Carnatic kings, but the culture of Bengal is very different from that in the south. Bengal also had to be colonized by the Brahmins, but in Bengal they had the competition from the Shaktas, and that was made the story quite different. At any rate, that's a whole different side of things. So now what I was talking about is that we have this Puranic history, this Bhagavata history, these stories of the development of the universe and the growth of the universe, and how it was pictured by the sages of yore, how they understood the process of creation, how it underwent, what was the dynamic of that. So we talked about a little bit about this in the last class because I was talking about Devahuti and Kardama, so I didn't want to get into it into too much depth. But then I was reading today's number 15, Anuched 15, and in Anuched 15 we go back to that story again. All right, only this time we go to the end of the story. So again, I was thinking, well, my Lord, we have to, have to understand this story properly, that what is being told in the story of Kardama and Devahuti. So there's a lot of, it's 4 chapters. So 4 chapters in Bhagavata terms is considerable amount of space. I mean, the Rasa Lila is only 5 chapters. And many of the other stories, they take 2 or 3 chapters, even with all the prayers and everything like that. So here, 4 whole chapters are being devoted to the story of Kardama and Devahuti. And the basic idea is to bring us to the point of Kapila. Now Kapila is the one, so now Kapila is the first real incarnation who's making a big impact now. So we just finished having, Varaha in the, Varaha. So Varaha precedes, yeah, so I'm just, just making, it says that Varaha comes in the third canto. So there's a lot of stuff in the third canto, right? Jaya and Vijaya being cursed. So Jaya and Vijaya being cursed. Madan Mohan said that was very nicely. Said that forms a kind of an underlying narrative which pervades the Bhagavatam all the way through to the 10th canto. This curse on Jaya and Vijaya, setting the stage for the different avatars and so on. But Kapila is a different kind of avatar. Kapila is not coming to fight Jaya and Vijaya. As a matter of fact, what is Kapila? And Kapila, well, look, let's be brutally honest here about the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam wants to assimilate the entire Hindu and uh, and let's say Indian traditions into Vaishnavism. It's doing that in surreptitious ways, right? It's doing that in surreptitious ways. It has the stories of Shiva, famous stories of Shiva, but Shiva is very distinctly a devotee of Krishna. Vaishnavanam yatha Shambhu. Vaishnava, he's presented as being a part of Vishnu. He's actually a product of Brahma's anger. That's the way he is the god of destruction. He's a guna avatar. He's not the same. So the ultimate good comes through the figure of the sattva guna, which is Vishnu, even in material terms, according to the Vaishnavas. So Shiva's ultimate blessing is to bring you to Vaishnavism. This is the way that the Vaishnava Purana sees Shiva and sees the other gods. All the other gods are subordinate to Vishnu. So that is the sectarian viewpoint and the sectarian vision, and that's going to affect the cosmology in the way that they see the creation story. So now why am we talking about the creation story in the Bhagavatam? Because Jiva Goswami is referring us back to this story in the third canto again, the Devahuti and Kardama Muni's story. So what is this story and where does it stand? Let's just go read the passage, out of form. Let's read the passage here that is being used by Jiva Goswami as an example of Samipya Mukti. So in a minute, Jiva Goswami, well, he'll say. So we're just going to talk about Samipya. All right, further down, he's going to talk about Samipya, so we won't bother with that right now. But he talks about Sayuja, and then at the end, he says that Samipya is all the other ones are included within Samipya, really. I believe that's what he says. Well, anyway, the mukti called Samipya. So Samipya api udahritam Bhagavat Sandarbhe Kardama Niryana Varnanasya Varnanaya Mano Brahmani Yunjanaha Ityarabhya Madhye cha labdhatma mukta bandhanaha ityuktva sarvante bhagavad bhakti yogena prapto bhagavatim gatim ityevam uktaritya. All right, so now here he's taken these verses. So this is a group of verses that were subjected to some detailed discussion in the Bhagavad Sandarbha. So let's read the translation here. So the mukti called Samipya is described in Bhagavad Sandarbha in the description of Kardama's death, beginning with the verse, Niryana, death, that's not so nice. Beginning with the verse, while fixing the mind on the Absolute. Ho, ho, ho. Now this is the problem, you see. I forgot to bring the candles. Hari Om. Hari Om. All right, I'm just going to go on reading because at least you can get the sound. And even if there's nothing to see, there was nothing to see anyway. So the mukti called Samipya is described in Bhagavad Sandarbha in the description of Kardama's death or nirjana, beginning with the verse 3:24-43, where it says, while fixing the mind on the absolute. And then in the middle, having attained the self, free from bondage. And finally, concluding, he attained the association of Bhagavan through devotion to him. Well, you see here, so this is the trouble with the word gati. So he attained Bhagavatim Gatim. So Jiva Goswami is telling us that it means Samipya. All right, we're going to stop there in terms of what we're going to look at today. I'll just read what Babaji says about this particular portion. Yes. Okay. So after giving examples of Salokya and Sarupya, Sri Jiva Goswami here gives an example of Samipya Mukti, which means to live in proximity to Bhagavan. The example of Kardama Muni is used. The complete description is as follows. So this was the 4 verses. Kardama fixed his mind on Brahman, which is beyond cause and effect, which is devoid of the gunas and yet illuminates them, and which is realized only by one-pointed devotional service. Being bereft of ego, possessiveness, and all forms of dualism, and being established in the vision of equanimity, Kardama witnessed his true self. Being inwardly centered, with his mind stabilized in unfluctuating peace, he became sober, like an ocean without waves. With his mind fixed on Bhagavan Vasudeva, the omniscient immanent self, through supreme devotion, Kardama attained his true self-identity, becoming free from all material bondage. He realized that Bhagavan is situated as the self in all beings, and that all beings exist in the self that is Bhagavan. Devoid of all hatred and desire, and being situated in the vision of equanimity towards all things, Kardama Muni attained the abode of the Lord through devotional service to him. In these 5 verses, the verse 3:24-43 describes the experience of Brahman. The next verse here, 46, of Paramatma, and the last, that of Bhagavan. By the order of his experience, the superiority of Bhagavat Sakshatkara has been implied. The first 4 verses are describing his internal experience, but the last verse speaks about his attaining the abode of Bhagavan. This also means that he attained his association. This can be understood from the fact that he was the father of Kapila, an incarnation of Bhagavan. Therefore, he must have had Samipya with him in Vaikuntha. So that is very good. So this is where Babaji's comment stops. And I think that what I would like to do, so now is a little bit of a problem because I don't have light. So let me see if I can remedy that to some extent. Radhe, 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 Radhe. Okay, well, we got a bit of a shadow problem here, but let's just go on. So the point here was to read. So I have enough light now. I'm going to read the whole story from beginning to end, and then we'll discuss it. If we have time, I'm going to read it in English only. Speed things up. So Vidura said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu was one most esteemed by all. Pray give me, O worshipful sage, an account of that race, the progeny of which multiplied through sexual union. So, a favorable word for sexual union. You have already told us that the two sons of Swayambhuva, Priyavrata, and Uttanapada piously ruled over the entire globe with its 7 divisions, dvipas as they are called. His daughter, known by the name of Devahuti, O holy Brahmana, has been spoken of by you as the spouse of the sage Kardama, a lord of created beings, a Prajapati. O sinless one, how many issues did that great yogi beget through that princess who was endowed with the 8 limbs of yoga, such as the 5 yamas and so on? Pray tell me all this, keen as I am to hear it. Similarly, O holy sage, tell me how the worshipful Ruchi, another lord of created beings, and Daksha, a son of Brahma and also a Prajapati, procreated children after securing as their wife the other 2 daughters of Swayambhuva Manu, Akuti and Prasuti. Maitreya replied, commanded by Brahma in the words, beget children, the worshipful Kardama practiced penance on the bank of the river Saraswati for a period of 10,000 years. During that penance, the sage Kardama devoutly waited upon Sri Hari, the bestower of blessings on those who flee to him for protection. Through various modes of worship, accompanied by deep meditation. Pleased with his austerities, O Vidura, the lotus-eyed Lord showed himself to him at the beginning of the Satya Yuga in a form consisting of his own divine essence, which is ordinarily known only through the divine word, the Vedas, the Shabda Brahma. So the point here is that we're seeing this is why I'm talking about the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam being the mood. What is the mood of the Bhagavatam? Right, so here the mood of the Bhagavatam is that the creation started with tapa, and the first word that was whispered to Brahma when he awoke into consciousness in the vast lotus navel of Lord Narayan. And he heard the words tapa, perform tapasya. So this entire world is meant for tapasya. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam vishuddhyet yasmad brahma sokhyam hoyanantam. So the words, though, the word that Brahma heard upon creation was tapaha. So now he's going to create this universe, and he has to create the universe with what? With the methods that have been given. So what is the method that has been given? The method that has been given is sexual union. This is the method that has been given for procreation, for filling the universe. So now Brahma is saying tapa, but when he starts to procreate, when he starts to create from his mind, he starts to create his sons. His first sons are Sanat Kumara, are the four Kumaras. And the four Kumaras, they rebel. So right away you have at the very beginning of the Shastra, the first story really of the creation, that Sanat Kumara, Sanaka, Sanandan, and Sanandan, that the four Kumaras, Sanatan, Sanat Kumar, they rebelled. They told their father, no, we're not going to be Prajapatis. We're not going to procreate. We're not even going to grow up. We are never going to hit adolescence, because if we hit adolescence, we'll get into trouble. So we're going to stay 5 years old, that's cool. Our brains will continue to develop. I don't know if this is biologically correct. I would imagine that certain aspects of human brain are definitely tied to the sexual, to the ability to procreate, and to the transformations that the body goes through in adolescence. But in order to prove a point, the four Kumaras, they do not want to take birth, and that's why Lord Brahma gets angry. Lord Brahma gets angry, and Shiva is created from that. The destructive force is created out of the stifling of the sexual energy. That the road to freedom has the problem of creating as a side effect anger in the when one has desires in the mode of passion. So then Narada came along and others came along. Narada started going around all the other, there were prachetas, and some of these stories come later in the fourth canto. Narada is also being a renouncer. He doesn't want to get married either. And Narada Muni is also talking to other people, telling them, going around preaching anti-householder life. It's a big problem now. This becomes a big problem for the Prajapatis. And for Brahma, Brahma is trying to get the world filled with population, and half his team is rebelling on him. And Narada is going around, and he ends up being cursed by Daksha because of his interference with the whole process of procreation, of filling the world with people. I wonder if we can say that's been done, that's been accomplished. At any rate, so the point is that they're going to perform tapasya. So even those ones like Kardama, so Kardama is also going to take up, he was ordered by his father, and he's a good man, a good boy, a good son, and he's going to do what his father told him to do. But here it said that he needs that and we see this being repeated in other places in the Bhagavatam, that the worldly life, that will not harm you, but you have to have a strong education, a strong basis. You have to be strengthened in terms of your tapasya. You have to be, in order to function in the world properly, you need a measure of detachment. If you're always being fluctuating, you need to be above your emotions in order to function in the material world. You have to be able to concentrate the mind in order to function in the material world. You have to be able to look outside of yourself in order to function in the material world. But you need to have that solid base of self-realization that comes from tapasya, that comes from rigorous self-discipline. This is the point about the culture of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is talking about a culture of self-discipline in yoga, of internalization as being the basis for functioning properly in this world. but it doesn't see the world as a place of unlimited sense gratification. It sees the world as a place for tapo divyam putraka yena shudyet, whereby one gets the Brahma Sokyam Tvanantam. The human form of life is there to make it's not simply meant for attaining the pleasures that are available to the hogs. Nayam Deho Deholokam, what is that anyway? Nayam Deha. I'm getting old, my friends. I don't remember my verses unless I prepare ahead of time, and I don't want to bother doing this. Let me read on. I'm just reading the story. So, Kardama beheld the Lord in his purely divine form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies and clad in spotless yellow silk, his lotus face fringed with sleek, dark locks of curly hair, adorned with a crown and earrings. He held his conch, discus, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily to play with in the 4th, while his smiling look captivated the heart. Having set his lotus feet on the shoulders of Garuda, he stood in the air with a golden streak, the symbol of goddess Lakshmi, on his breast, and the famous Kaustubha gem suspended from his neck. Having realized the ambition of his life and full of joy, the sage fell prostrate with his head touching the ground, and rising began to extol the Lord in the following words, with a mind naturally full of love and his palms joined in prayer. The sage said, "Ah, the fruit of our eyes has been fully attained today by beholding you, the repository of all goodness, whose sight, O praiseworthy Lord, is coveted even by yogis established in deep yogic meditation, after going through higher and still higher births. Your lotus feet are a veritable vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane existence. Only they who have been deprived of their senses by your Maya worship those feet with a view to attaining the trivial and momentary pleasures of sense that can be had even in hell. You, however," this is the situation nowadays, people having lots of sense gratification, but they're in hell. They don't even know it. Sometimes maybe they know it. Then they take drugs. You, however, O Lord, bestow on them such pleasures of sense too. You are a wish-yielding tree, while my heart is impure, tainted by carnality. Therefore, desirous of marrying a girl of like disposition, tainted by carnality, I don't know. Sounds like an ad. Desirous of marrying a girl of like disposition that may prove a veritable cow of plenty. Yield all the 3 objects of human pursuit in my married life. I too have likewise sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of all blessings. So he's saying, I have this desire to get married and to enjoy family life. Now, they let him off the hook in the commentaries. They said, no, he's following Brahma's order. So because he's following Brahma's order, therefore there's no fault of carnality here on the part of Kardama. At any rate, we should take it that this is being spoken to us in a spirit of understanding what family life is meant to be in bhakti, right? How men and women are supposed to work together for spiritual progress. And in particular, this is for the Brahmin. Now we're going to get a little bit about that, so I'm going to read on because this will take time. But in the next chapter, when Manu meets with Kardama, and they arrange the marriage. So here he's saying that he's saying that I shouldn't approach you for my material desires, but here I have this material desire. Well, Lord Brahma is creating the universe. He's doing it as a service to Krishna, right? He's making the best damn universe he can for the sake of Krishna. That's the way that Brahma is approaching the business of being in the world and creating the world. But this creation, this kind of, and it's not insignificant, this service. This material world has a function, has a real important function for Krishna's pleasure and for the pleasure of the individual jivatmas also. The sum total of the universe is Ananda. Anandadimani bhutani jayanti. All these creatures arise out of joy. So the universe is an act of joy on the part of God. But it has multiple layers of meaning. So he's saying that, so even though you could forgive Kardama for not thinking that he was actually acting out of a desire for his own sense pleasure. So that's where we start. So this is the starting point. So he's saying that he's acting out of a desire for sense pleasure. So that sense pleasure, that desire for sense pleasure is what the universe is for, right? The material universe was created so that individual souls could experience different kinds of pleasure. It's a world of experience. So, constantly smitten by desire, this world, O Lord of the universe, is bound like a beast by the cord of the word, Veda, uttered by you, the Lord of created beings. Following the ways of the world, I too, O embodiment of unalloyed virtue, bear offerings in the shape of dutiful obedience to you, who appear as time. So in a sense, Kardama, so Kardama here is right at the very beginning. He's really the first, in a sense, well, I have to go back and look a little bit more carefully at the way that it's arranged here. My weaknesses in the Bhagavatam are revealed. But at any rate, which Prajapatis are activated. So here Kardama is an exemplary Prajapati because he's not rebelling. He is dutifully obedient to the desire of his father in order to create progeny. But he considers that, so he sees this now as Krishna's desire in this world. The Lord's desire in this world is expressed by time. And all of us who are under the influence of time and karma, we have little or no control over what happens over the course of time. But time does end with death. So the experiences that we have in this world are temporary and fleeting and illusory. So turning our back on worldly-minded men, as well as on the human beasts like me who follow them, your devotees seek the protection of your feet that afford shelter like an umbrella against the sun of metempsychosis, and meet the requirements of the body in the shape of hunger, thirst, and so on, by drinking the inebriating nectar of your praises uttered before one another. Your wheel in the shape of time, which has 3 navels in the shape of 3 divisions of the year, consisting of 4 months each, rotates around the axle of the imperishable Brahman. It has 13 spokes, representing the 13 months, including the additional month intercalcated every 3rd year, the Purushottam Masa, the Mal Masa. 360 joints, corresponding to the same number of days comprised in a year. 6 rims in the shape of the 6 seasons, and numberless leaves in the shape of moments, carved on it. So it's a nice wheel with all kinds of decorations carved onto it. And the wheel is turning around, the wheel of time. 13 spokes representing the months. Right? So our Hindu calendar is problematic. It doesn't fit the 365 days of scientific understanding of the year. It has only 360 days, so every 3 years, enough days accumulate that one has to fill in the space. Otherwise, we'd end up like the Muslims with their rotating calendar. You never know when the month of fasting is going to come, Ramadan. So if the month comes, you're living in northern latitudes, and the day is very, very long in the summer, and you have to fast only at night. So you have a long wait between morning and night. So in order to prevent that from happening, because you might have the next time, or a couple of years down the road, it ends up in the middle of winter, and you have very, very short days. So fasting is no problem at all, and you can eat with comfort. So instead of that, you have this intercalcating every 3 years, an extra month, which is called Malmas, and in that month there's Ekadasi is observed, but there are no other feasts. And it's part of the Chaturmasya, so it lengthens the Chaturmasya, and it's considered to be a very excellent time to perform different kinds of religious and spiritual activities. At any rate, so this is the wheel of time that's turning around. O Lord, the one without a second, you assume in yourself the Yoga Maya, your wonderful creative energy, which is no other than you, with a view to creating the universe, and with the help of potencies like Sattva, etc., emanating from the said Yoga Maya, you bring forth and preserve, and will then reabsorb the universe into yourself, even as the spider spins a cobweb and maintains it and then swallows it up. Although we know it is not liked by you, O Supreme Lord, that you should provide us, your devotees, by dint of your Maya, deluding potency, with the pleasures of sense. Let them come to us for our ultimate good, or final beatitude. Right? So let them come to us for our ultimate good, or final beatitude. Where does it say that? Let's see, what's that number? Number 20. Naitad vatadisha padam tabepsitam yanmayayanas tanushe bhuta sukshmam anugrahaya swapiyayarhimayaya lasat tulasya tanuva vilakshitah. So some readings have tanuva, some have Bhagavan here. All right, well, I'll have to go back and read that commentary again. So, although by virtue of your self-realization you have, although we know it's not liked by you, O Supreme Lord, that you should provide us, your devotees, by dint of your deluding potency, with the pleasures of sense. Let them come to us for our ultimate good or final beatitude. When you have appeared before us in a form adorned with a splendid wreath of tulasi, basil leaves, a form which looks finite through Maya. All right, so the act of procreation is being given a kind of divine permission here, right? It's being done. It's a pleasure of the sense, but it's being done after by virtue of your self-realization, you have ever ignored the consequences in your activity. You have conducted the affairs of the world by your own sportive will and shower the desired blessings even on those who adore you with some interested motive. I repeatedly bow to you whose lotus feet are worthy of reverence to all. So there again he's saying that even he has some self-interest he wants to enjoy. So Maitreya resumed, sincerely extolled in the aforesaid words, Lord Vishnu, whose navel is distinguished by a lotus, and who shone on the shoulders of Garuda, replied in accents sweet as nectar, his eyebrows gracefully moving as he regarded the sage with a smile full of affection. The Lord said, having come to know what was in your mind, I have already arranged that for which you have worshipped me, well through the discipline of the mind and senses, etc. Worship offered to me by those who have solely fixed their mind on me, particularly by people like you, O Lord of created beings, can never go in vain. You know Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, the son of Brahma, who is celebrated for his righteous acts, rules over the earth, bounded by the 7 oceans, having his seat in Brahma Varta. Accompanied by his spouse, Queen Shatarupa, that royal sage who knows the secret of dharma, right conduct, will come to see you, O holy Brahmana, the day after tomorrow, and will give away his dark-eyed daughter, who has attained the marriageable age, is possessed of noble character and commendable virtues, and is on the lookout for a match, to you who are in every way worthy of her. O Lord of created beings, being just the type on which you have set your heart all these long years, that princess, O holy sage, will soon be yours and will serve you to your heart's content. She will bring forth 9 daughters out of the seed sown in her by you, and through the daughters sprung from your loins, sages like Marichi will duly beget children. And with your heart cleansed by properly carrying out my command, and having resigned to me the fruit of all your acts, you will finally attain to me. Showing compassion to living beings in your married life, you will attain self-realization, and giving assurance of safety to all as a recluse, you will perceive your own self as well as the universe identified in me and myself in you. Manifesting a part of my divine being through your wife Devahuti, along with your 9 daughters, O great sage, I shall instruct her in the system of philosophy known by the name of Sankhya, that deals with the ultimate principles or categories such as Prakriti, Purusha, Ishvara, and so on. Okay, so this is setting the stage for the teachings of Kapila. So this whole section, starting with chapter 21, is called Kapileya. So we're just getting a preparation for the personality of Kapila, who is this divine teacher. So the father and the mother are being described in order to glorify the son. And the son is glorified through the parents. So the fact that Kardama, we have all these examples that have been given to us. We just saw a little bit about Prishni and Sutapa in another section there, talking about Vasudeva and Devaki. And here again, these different examples of the parents who had as their child an incarnation of Krishna. So here he says it's a partial incarnation, but so be it. Kardama is a partial incarnation, but he has the abhiman, so he uses the word. He uses the word me, talking about bhakti to me, and to be conscious of me. So he uses that. He uses the personal pronoun to talk about himself as the supreme God. So again, we have the light problem. Well, I wanted to get this, let's try to finish this chapter at least. I think I'm going to go through them all. Even after the departure of the Lord, the worshipful sage Kardama stayed in his hermitage on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara, awaiting the time predicted by the Lord when Manu would come. On his side, Swayambhuva Manu, with his spouse Shatarupa, mounted his gold-plated chariot and, taking his daughter Devahuti along with him, and journeying all over the globe, reached the aforementioned hermitage of the sage Kardama, who had just completed his vow of austerity on the very day foretold by the Lord. O Vidura, the holy Bindu Sarovara, which overflowed with the water of the river Saraswati, and was resorted to by hosts of eminent sages, and whose water was not only wholesome, but also sweet as nectar, was so called because drops of tears which had fallen thereon from the eyes of the Lord. Overwhelmed as he was by extreme compassion directed towards the sage who had sought his protection, the lake was rich. So this is not, Narayan had tears when he saw Kardama. And then the Bindu Sarovara was filled with his tears also. The lake was rich in fruits and flowers of all seasons, inasmuch as it was surrounded by clusters of sacred trees and creepers, affording shelter to holy beasts and birds that uttered various cries, and was adorned with rows of forest trees. It resounded with the notes of overjoyed birds, and was the scene of the humming of intoxicated bees. Merry peacocks proudly danced in the forest surrounding the lake, and many cuckoos called one another by their sweet notes. I heard a cuckoo here today. So that's not frequent. We don't hear them so much in Vrindavan, especially not, they've cut down all the trees, right? So they've become urbanized. But because of our nice garden here next door, many birds have been attracted. And so today, very close by, a cuckoo was singing. So that was a very pleasant, we sometimes hear them from further away, but never so close. The iconic bird, the iconic sound of rural India, the koil. The lake was hemmed round by Kadamba, Champaka, Ashoka, Karanja, Bakula, Asana, Kunda, Mandara, Kutaja, and young mango trees, and echoed with the pleasing notes of karandavas, plovers, swans, ospreys, waterfowls, cranes, chakravakas, and chokoras. So lots of water birds. Actually, still here in Braja, you can see these. And I got some photos there from the place where Lokanath Goswami had where he was doing bhajan, and he had where Radhakanta appeared to him. There's a lake there also, just full of all kinds of water birds, especially the bakas, of course, but all kinds of water birds. Also other animals. It was infested with deer, boars, porcupines, and gael, what they call Nilagai, and elephants, baboons, lions, monkeys, mongooses, and musk deer. So entering that most sacred spot with his daughter, beautiful. So this is the hermitage, right? The hermitage is a forest. Think of Tatiyastan. It's a very tidy forest, and there are animals there, but the basic, in the larger forest, but the immediate forest and the trees. I've actually seen research that was done on this kind of thing. That actually the Indian, the sages, that they were living in the forest, but the forest was kind of like a farm. They were living in tandem with the forest. They knew the forest plants, and they had planted trees that produced fruit in the season and so on. So it was not like they made the forest as conducive to human residence as possible through the planting of fruit trees and so on, and having a little bit of agricultural space set aside and so on. But mostly it's a forest kind of foraging economy. But they, at any rate, what kind of commerce was there, we don't know. But certainly the kings and so on, they would come to the hermitage. People would come from the towns and come to the hermitage, and they would give gifts so that there would be food for them to share. And people would come and they would be treated to a meal by the hermits who were living there. So entering that most sacred spot, so that's the sacred spot, right? When we were talking about Vrindavan, also Vrindavan is a sacred spot because the Vrindavan is a hermitage. It's the forest hermitage. This is actually the vision of Vrindavan. Not necessarily that there are tigers and lions wandering about, but if you were here before 40, 50, 60 years ago and saw what Raman Reti was like, it was very much like that. There were trees, big trees, neem trees, and so on. But the soil was sandy. It was like a beach, sandy soil. And so there was not that much growing. It was interesting, kind of big trees that had been planted and grown, but apart from one another and leaving sandy soil in between with not much growing there. Okay. So not necessarily exactly like that, but the idea was that you had sages living in cottages in the middle of the woods, near to, if they could find a source of water, or if they were within walking distance of the Jamuna, they could walk to the Jamuna and bring back a pot of water. And in those days, the water was very clean, so it was not a problem. You could bring the Jamuna water back, and you could have it there in a clay pot, and it would stay cool all day long. Just near here, like where Bhagavad Nivas is, and where the just where ISKCON. It's all part of Brahmanriti. All right, so entering into that most sacred spot, that's what I was just saying, this very sacred spot, Pravishya Tat Tirtha Varam, and going near the sage, the first monarch, Adi Raja, Swayambhuva, saw him sitting there in his hermitage, having propitiated the sacred fire by pouring oblations into it. He shone most brilliant with his body, which though engaged in austere penance for a long time, was not much emaciated, because the Lord had cast his affectionate glance at him, and he had also quaffed with his ears the nectar flowing from the moonlike words of the Lord. The sage was of high stature, had eyes big as the petals of a lotus, wore matted locks on his head, was clad in rags, and looked untidy like an unpolished gem. Seeing the monarch come to his hermitage and bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benedictions and received him with due honor. So absorbed, he's so absorbed and so fixated on his practices, on his spiritual practices, that he has little consciousness of his own bodily appearance. But despite that, he doesn't appear emaciated. When the king had sat down calm and collected after receiving the sage's attentions, the latter, who recalled the instructions of the Lord, spoke to him as follows, delighting him with his soft accents. The tour undertaken by you, O Lord, is surely intended to protect the virtuous and kill the wicked, embodying as you do the protecting energy of Sri Hari. First, a duty of the king to embody the protecting energy of Sri Hari. It is you who assume the forms of the sun god, the moon god, the god of fire, Indra, the lord of paradise, the wind god, Yama, the god of punishment, Dharma, the god of piety, and Varuna, the god presiding over the waters. As and when necessary, hail to you who are no other than Lord Vishnu. So Manu is also an avatar, Manvantara avatar. So in his function as king, is also an avatar. So even in a democracy, those who have power, because power is one of the 6 inherent characteristics of Bhagavan, they are Bhagavan. They possess a Bhaga. They have power. So even if they have partial power through their karma, they still manifest in a sort Bhagavan, right? In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita expresses that whole idea of opulence, having the same opulence as Krishna. So Krishna manifests as the opulences in all opulent things. So the king is the protecting energy of Hari, and is actually none other than Lord Vishnu. If you can understand one thing about Hinduism, it's how you're being trained to see Krishna. You're being trained to see Vishnu. So when you see power, you should understand the presence of Vishnu is there. Where there is truth, there is Vishnu. So there are sometimes competing Vishnus, because truth and power can compete. And of the two, as he'll say here, if you did not go about the world like the sun in your bejeweled chariot that ever leads you to victory, twanging your fierce bow, inspiring terror in the heart of the wicked by the presence of your very chariot, taking a huge army behind you and shaking the terrestrial globe by the tread of your hosts, all the moral laws governing the various varnas, the grades of society, and ashramas, stages in life, and made by the Lord himself, O King, will be broken that very moment by impious men, which will be a deplorable state of things. Nay, unrighteousness will flourish on account of grasping and unruly men. If you give up all thought of the world, it will fall into the clutches of impious men and perish. Nevertheless, I ask you, O valiant king, the purpose for which you have come here, and with a glad heart we shall meet your wishes. So the meeting of the king and the Brahmin. So the Brahmin in the next chapter is going to say how he is the servant of how the king, the Kshatriya, is the servant of the Brahmins. Okay, I want to read this whole thing through, so we're going to do this again in the next class. I think I'll just spin them off real quickly, maybe not do one now, but tomorrow morning, and get this, read through this whole section here, because somehow or another I think it's being brought to our attention by Jiva Goswami. He's got something that he wants us to learn. So he's taken some verses already from this section of the Bhagavatam, and now in close juxtaposition, he gave us a verse from the very beginning, from the earlier part, and now he's giving us a verse from the culmination of the whole story of Kardama Muni. So I'm curious about this, and I want to read it all the way through. And I'm sharing it with you. I'm trying to read it in a way. I hope that the reading is good. I should practice my radio voice a little bit more, and so that the full drama can be exploited. The story is being told of Manu and Kardama and Brahma, and especially of Kardama Muni. This is what we're interested in, Kardama Muni. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam.